Let's take a look at factoring polynomials, and let's just focus on factoring trinomials that are quadratics and the leading coefficient is 1, so a equals 1. So let's take a look at this first example here. We have y squared minus 5y minus 14. Following through the steps that we laid out on just the overview of factoring, we should know that the very first thing we want to try and do is get a common factor, a greatest common factor that we can pull out front. Looking at all three terms here, you see there is no greatest factor that we can take out of all three terms, so we're good to just move on. Double checking here, we can see that none of our little shortcuts are going to work, so this is not a difference of squares or a perfect square trinomial. We just got to go ahead and factor this using our AC method, meaning we're going to take our a, which is 1, times our c, negative 14, which will give us negative 14. And we're also going to use our b, which in this case is negative 5. We're going to look for two numbers that multiply together to give us our a times c, and we're also going to look for two numbers that will add up to our negative 5. In this particular problem, just kind of looking at it here, we can look for our two numbers, and we can see that the two numbers that make this problem work here are going to be 7, negative 7, and positive 2. Because negative 7 times 2 gives us our negative 14, negative 7 plus 2 gives us our negative 5. Now in this case, since our a is 1, we're kind of lucky. There's a quick way to just finish factoring this problem. Since we know that a quadratic will factor down to two linear terms, we can see here that our two linear terms are going to be y minus 7 from the minus 7 here times y plus 2 from the plus 2 that made that problem work over there as well. And we're done. Y minus 7 times y plus 2 is the factored form of this. To check it, we could distribute it back out. Y times y is y squared. Y times 2 is plus 2y. Negative 7 times y is minus 7y. So the plus 2y and the minus 7y are simplified down to the minus 5y. And then the negative 7 times 2 is the minus 14. So we know we did this right. Let's take a look at the next example. We've got 4x squared plus 12x minus 40. Again, we want to see if there's a greatest common factor we can take out of all three terms. Here, it's going to be 4. 4 goes evenly into both 4x squared, 12x, and minus 40. So if we factor the 4 out front, let's take a look at what will be left as part of our quadratic here. We'll have x squared plus 3x minus 10. Looking at this quadratic trinomial, none of our patterns are going to make it any easier, so we'll go straight to the AC method. A times c is negative 10. Our b is 3, so we're looking for the two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 10 and add up to the 3. Taking a look at this for a second, we should be able to see that the answers to this are going to be 5 and negative 2. Those are the numbers that make that work out. So again, a is 1. We can do this nice and quick. We can see that the quadratic trinomial here is going to factor down to a binomial times a binomial. We're going to have x plus 5 times x minus 2. That's how this quadratic factors down. And then don't forget about our greatest common factor that we already took out front, the 4. And that here will be the factored version of 4x squared plus 12x minus 40. Example 3, we'll start the exact same way as the previous two. Look for that greatest common factor. Here it's going to be 5. We take the 5 out, we're going to be left with x squared minus 11x minus 30. Not one of our special patterns. A times c is negative 30. Our b, our coefficient of the middle term, is negative 11. So we're looking for the two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 30 and add up to negative 11. Taking a look at this, we can see that the two numbers that are going to make that work are well, there's none that actually make that one work, which means that this is as factored as it can get. Final answer will be what we have right here. 5 times the quantity of x squared minus 11x minus 30. Done.